Good evening, everybody. I hope you're all doing well this Friday night, and I hope you've all got a glass of something nice and tasty in front of you for this evening. We're into week 7 of lockdown, so this is the 7th of our softer side sessions, and things are still pretty weird, and we're still trying to adjust to life as it is right now and enjoy whiskey in new ways. And what's been really interesting is to see that even over the last few weeks of all this strange times, that whiskey still has achieved its number one goal, its number one function, which is to bring people together. Last night, I was lucky enough to hold a virtual tasting with our partner in Denmark, and we had over 200 people watching. 300 people had bought sample kits to that, so it was an incredible evening with that as well. This week was meant to be the start of the Spirit of Speyside Festival. That's not something that we at Tomatin participate in as a Highland single malt, but we always have a lot of people coming over from Speyside to see the distillery, and it's an incredible time to meet people over a dram and meet people that you maybe know from online or from festivals and share a whiskey with. Obviously, this year that's not been possible, but there's been a lot of content going out online. There's been a lot of social media. Some would maybe say that there's been too much going out. I personally think that you only have to watch what you enjoy watching. But what I've really found really interesting at the moment is that a lot of people who otherwise maybe wouldn't have interacted with distilleries or interacted with the whiskey community, maybe sit at home and enjoy whiskey by themselves, are now given the option to enjoy whiskey and learn about whiskey in a way that they never have before. But that ties back to what will things go back to? What will life be like after lockdown and things like that? And how do you continue to engage with whiskey? And for me, whiskey clubs have always been a big, big part of my enjoyment of whiskey, of how I've learned about whiskey. So my guest tonight is George Michie from the Soho Whisky Club down in London. One of the finest whiskey clubs I've ever had the opportunity to host tastings with. And we're going to chat a little bit about the current situation, some of the difficulties that are being faced, but also the importance of whiskey clubs and how great they can be. So raise a glass and welcome in George Michie. Hi, George.
How are you, mate? Okay.
I'm good. Now, first things first, did I pronounce your surname properly there?
Very impressive, Scott.
Nice. Nice. I think I was so tempted to say Michie, but I think when I said Michie, you never looked like you were going to kill me in the little screen at the bottom.
Yeah, no, you're right. Most people get it wrong, I have to say, so well done.
Fantastic. How are things?
Yeah, very good. Very good. Quiet, bored, but...
Yeah. So I guess probably to start off with, you should probably explain to everyone what your current situation is.
So on March the 19th, the club was had to close because Boris told us so. And since then, the team and I have been furloughed and kind of just getting our heads around how we're going to reset up, how we're going to get on with a new normal, as they keep saying. And yeah, hopefully we'll be back as quickly as we can be. Well, we will be back as quickly as we can be.
Good. So it's funny, over these sessions over the last few weeks, there have been a couple of sessions where I've had people in that have really had loads of questions that I've wanted to ask. And then there's been other occasions where I've just wanted to have a dram with someone that I really find quite enjoyable to have a dram with. And that's very much what is the case tonight. And I think before I get you to tell everyone a little bit about yourself, I'd like to share a story about my first time meeting you. Because this was probably a couple of years ago now. It was when I had just come back from White and Mackay, and Stan Reid was covering London at the time. The legend is Stan Reid, you know him well. And he had arranged a tasting, a Tomatin tasting at Soho Whisky Club for me to go and host. And like every tasting, you never know what, when you first go in, you never know what you're going to get. You never know what the crowd's going to be like, how it's going to be. Is it going to be a quiet night? Is it going to be a fun night? And we walk into the club, the Soho Whisky Club, first time I've been there, and you're surrounded by these incredible bottles. So that's quite breathtaking. We go in and a little introduction, but you're busying away. You're getting the drams set up. You're getting the glasses poured. You've managed to find time to get myself and Stan a bottle of beer, which is always greatly appreciated. But before we even really had a chance to speak, everyone was coming in. They were having a chat with you, and the tasting was set up and good to go. And I still didn't really have a vibe for what was going to happen until you started by saying, "Good evening, everybody." And everyone in the room shouts back, "Good evening, George." And then you got everybody in the room to say good evening to a bonsai tree.
Dorothy.
Yeah. So with that, I knew that I was going to have a pretty good evening, and you did not disappoint at all.
Well, the good evening, everybody, good evening, George, came from the previous general manager of the club, who was also called George. And to this day, I'm pretty sure that that's the only reason that Malcolm hired me, to make it easier for the members, smooth sailing. And the bonsai tree, I don't know why I got it in my head that I wanted to buy a bonsai tree, but it took me some persuading of Malcolm to part with 50 quid for this tree that he said was definitely going to die within weeks. And actually, do you know what? I kept Dorothy going until I went on holiday and one of my team members, James, killed the tree. It was the hottest day of the year, and I think he left the poor thing outside.
Well, so funnily enough, that was just before the last time I came down to do the decades tasting, because I came in and you were sitting at the end of the bar, and I was like, "Oh, hey, George, where's Dorothy?" And you were raging. You were so angry. It was like I just brought up a terrible, terrible moment.
Yeah, to this day, he still blames Mark, but it was James who killed the tree.
Yeah. You're not forgiven yet, James. So. George, what do you have in your glass tonight to kick us off with?
I have got Tomatin 36-year-old.
That is not a bad start at all.
Not bad. Well, not bad. I was looking through my stocks to see what Tomatin I had, and it seems like I drank the rest. I saved this one because I knew I shouldn't be drinking this on a normal, typical day.
Right.
Certainly shouldn't be drinking this on your own, but seeing as you're here, Scott, why not?
Yeah. That said, it doesn't look like you've done a very good job of not drinking that whiskey. There's not a lot left in that bottle.
True. No, it's absolutely excellent.
Yeah, fantastic. As always, for anyone that's watching, I didn't ask George to have a Tomatin to hand. It's just very lucky that he did. I'm actually, I know you're a fan of bourbon, so I'm having a bourbon to kick off with tonight. So barrel proof, which likewise doesn't have a lot left in it, but I've spent a couple of nights drinking bourbon with you, so I thought in that honor I'll have one of this. So Slanger.
I was supposed to be going to Kentucky with 3 friends I think we were going on the 20th of March, so the day after the club shut down. I was meant to be in Kentucky for a week going around distilleries. So we'd set up some amazing ones.
Have you been over before?
No, never. I've been to America a couple of times, but never Kentucky.
Yeah. I think that's it's an interesting one because we've been hearing a lot about people who had plans to come over to Scotland. Like we were saying before we went live, it's Spirit of Speyside this week. In a couple of weeks, it's the Highland Whisky Festival. Then you've got Fèis Isle as well. So we're hearing a lot about people planning coming to Scotland for whiskey, having their travel plans cancelled. But you're in the same boat.
Yeah, I was meant to be going the other way. But we luckily we got all the money back. And we've done a trial run of setting up all the distillery tours. So as soon as we possibly can, we'll be over there.
Yeah, so I think like a lot of these things, it's a postponement rather than a cancellation, eh?
Yeah, and I think probably, it's not going to be this year, is it?
Yeah, it doesn't look that way. Does not look that way, but sadly. But before we go any further, tell everybody a little bit about yourself. How did you get into whiskey? What first interested in you in whiskey? I guess what I'm asking is, where did it all go wrong so that you're sitting on a live stream with me on a Friday night?
Oh, well, no, this is the best thing. Well, actually, by accident. I was trying to get into wine. I was an actor. I'd been not particularly successful actor for many years, and decided, and I always use this, I decided that I ought to get paid for drinking so much.
Right.
The idea was to get into the wine trade. I started doing my WSET course and did a 6-month wine tour of France, working on vineyards, and it was something that I really wanted to do. And when I was studying for the exam, my mate Scotty, bit plug, 1936, right. That's probably the first beer I gave you.
Yeah, it was actually. Yeah, that is almost the beer of the Soho Whisky Club.
Yeah, it is, yeah. That was the first thing I did, was get that in. So yeah, me and Scotty were on the lash around Soho, and he took me into this far too trendy for me little whiskey club, whiskey bar called Milroy's. Really cool place. And I got to meet the team, and what I say is I woke up the next day with a hangover and a job. It was just a holiday job. I wasn't expecting to. I knew nothing about whiskey. Well, I still know nothing about whiskey, but I really knew nothing about whiskey. And we decided that I would work over the Christmas whilst I was studying for my exams. And then Christmas came and went. I decided that I really liked whiskey. And then George, the previous manager of the Soho Whisky Club, took me outside for a cigarette and said, apply for the job, because he was going to Australia. And I said to him, don't be ridiculous. I don't know anything about whiskey. And he said, doesn't matter, lie on your CV. I think he said, puff up your CV and make it more whiskey related. So that's what I did, thinking, what's the harm of it? It's not going to happen anyway. And then I got offered the job.
Fantastic.
And that, as they say, is that. I am very pleased that it all worked out that way. It was completely by accident.
So I'm going to rewind a little bit, because in a couple of weeks I'm going to be speaking to John Robertson from the Edinburgh Whisky Academy, and we're going to be talking a lot about the sort of education element of whisky and what is out there. So tell us a little bit about WSET, because it's something that I've been in before. When I was at White Mackay, I was studying that, but then left White Mackay, so that never came about. But tell us a little bit about your wine exams. How far did you go with that?
So I did WSET 3, so Wine Spirit Education Trust 3.
So that's when it starts to get into the hard levels as well, isn't it? Like 1 and 2 are relatively...
1 and 2 are relatively easy. In fact, I don't think you have to take 1. Well, you don't, because I didn't.
Right.
So 2 I sailed, because you would sail it if you drink too much wine, which I certainly did. And 3 I went in and I thought, yeah, I'm going to sail this. They sent me a bit of a big book. In fact, it's about that size, because that's level 3 spirits.
Right.
I'm studying for at the moment. And I kind of thought, I don't need to read this. I'm going to sail it. It'll be fine. Level 2 was really easy. Level 3 might be a bit more difficult. Not the case. I passed the tasting bit of the exam and royally messed up the theory. Right. So that was before my wine tour. And then when I came back, I was studying really hard, because I realised I had to for the retake for the theory, and passed it.
Nice.
I'm not particularly academic at all.
Right.
I had to work really hard, and level 3 in spirits is looking pretty tough as well.
Yeah. So you're doing the level 3 in spirits now as well. Did you do 2 already?
Yeah. No, I never did 2, but because I was level 3 wine, I could take the entrance exam for level 3.
Right. Okay. Got you. That makes sense. Yes, because that's, again, I'm going to be talking about that with John a lot more. There's a lot of options out there, but I think for me, the way I really learned about whiskey, and I'm sure it's the way for you as well, because you started managing the whisky club before you even really knew a lot about whiskey. For me, the way that I have learned the majority about whiskey, of course, working with a lot of the people at Matin, but being among people drinking whiskey, especially in like a club environment where you have people that actively want to learn, but also they're there to enjoy the liquid as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do not. You don't learn about whiskey in a book, that's for sure.
No.
And I think it was a huge baptism of fire, me taking over the club. I remember there was a 2-week handing over period from George to myself.
Right.
And as part of that, we do external tastings at the Soho Whisky Club. So you can ring up and book an introduction to whiskey for 35 quid, all the way through to the dream drams at 250 quid a person.
Wow.
And we do a lot of them. We probably do 10 to 15 a week. And these were still ongoing during the handover between George and I. And the first one, he was like, right, go on then, do the tasting. And I was like, oh, no, I don't know. And I quickly realised I was going to have to really step up my whiskey knowledge and stop being so flimsy. Get on with that. But I did make him do that first tasting after.
Yeah, I mean, you almost you kind of pulled a lot on yourself there by becoming the manager of a whiskey club, because, I mean, my job is to know a lot about one brand and be able to talk about that one brand very well. But you have to be able to talk about any brand that's on the shelf, at least a level more intelligent than the person that you're talking to. And those people are very, very intelligent from the room.
They are. But you know what? They're not in there 24 hours a day. 12 hours a day in my case. And you pretty quickly pick it up. You're at all the tastings. You've got people like yourself who are incredibly knowledgeable. And you pick it up pretty quickly by drinking the stuff and just thirst for knowledge. And as you know, the people in our trade who do our type of jobs live and breathe whiskey. We adore it. Yeah. And I think that thirst for knowledge comes from that love. And if I didn't have that, there would be I wouldn't still be at the club. It's a real romantic project. I think you need to be in love with it. And I was, and because of that, I've picked up enough to get by, and I did that fairly early on. Of course, whilst for the first time learning how to manage a team and learning how to do all of the bits and bobs, the administration that comes along with a private members club like that. And on top of that, you're also really trying to ramp up your whiskey knowledge so that you don't get caught out. And still, I do get caught out occasionally.
Yeah, we always do, don't we? But it's sometimes it's quite enjoyable because it's another thing for you to go and look at and find out about. So that's pretty cool.
The more that I have learned about whiskey, the more that I've learned I don't know.
Yeah.
Such a vast subject. There's no way that everyone can know. I was watching Som Into the Bottle last night.
Right.
What's that? About master sommeliers.
Oh, I've not seen that.
It's the training up and the taking of the exam of these guys who want to become master sommeliers, which is one of the highest echelons of wine. And it's difficult. I mean, they're expected to pick up a glass and go there. And that's Chardonnay from this region, from this year. And it is just incredible how much knowledge there are within these subjects. And whiskey is definitely on the same league as that.
Yeah. And I guess the fact now that whiskey is becoming, I mean, I think for a long, long time, whiskey, if you said whiskey, you were talking about Scotch, but now it truly is a global spirit. It's made everywhere in the world near enough. So even once you pull back that layer, even if you think, right, I finally know everything there is to know about Scotch whiskey, you've still just got a drop in the pond there. There's so much more to learn about. I don't know a huge amount about bourbon. I know I enjoy drinking it, but like you, I would love to one day go over to Kentucky and learn more from the guys that are masters of that.
Let's do it. Come along with
it. There we go. That is a plan. I guess what we should do is, and because of the furlough situation, I will do that BBC thing of saying other whiskey clubs are available. But tell us a little bit about the Soho Whisky Club. Give everyone a bit of background as to how that started and what it actually is.
So the Soho Whisky Club is a private members club above the Vintage House, which is a shop on Old Compton Street. That's a shop that's been there since the 1940s, I think. Whiskey and wine shop, and many other spirit supply also. And then the club were the offices, so they're upstairs of the shop, And Malcolm, who's the owner, had in his mind years and years and years ago that it would be cool to create a private members club up there. And one day he decided that's exactly what he was going to do. So he knocked through the back window to create a terrace. So we've got a cigar terrace out there, which sits 16 people, covered cigar terrace. And then when you walk into the door of the club, you've got 700 bottles, open bottles around the room. And we do the private tastings, as I was describing earlier. And then we do the tastings, for instance, like the one that you do for Tomatin, where a brand ambassador or a master distiller will come along and 20 of us will sit down and you'll be extremely generous with the whiskies that you bring and we'll share them out and you'll tell us all about it. And we do one of them a week. And then on top of that, we do other events. So for instance, last year, I, for some reason, got in my mind that I wanted to do a casino night. So we got in a roulette table and a blackjack table, and I got them to all dress up, dinner jackets and ballroom gowns. And we did some canapes. So that was one night that we did. We do a magic night. We've got a member who's a member of the Magic Circle, John. So,
you've mentioned this before. I'm intrigued as to how a magic whiskey night goes.
It's so good. It's amazing. So we choose about, I think I normally choose 5 bottles of whiskey. It's one of the very, very few paid for events that we do. The reason that we do them is basically to pay the magician and to pay for the whiskies. And then John and his friend Paul Longhurst, who's another member of the Magic Circle, will walk around the room. You'll have your own table with your guests, and he'll do close-up magic for 10 to 15 minutes whilst I come along and give you a dram and tell you all about it. And then it builds up to one big trick at the end. Normally one that John tries to get Malcolm up for.
Right.
Members love that, of course.
Yeah.
They're brilliant. They're great nights.
That's brilliant.
What else do we do? I normally try and do kind of like something around Independence Day. Of course, we have Burns Night, and we just try and have fun. The most important thing for me is that we don't take ourselves too seriously. I think when you envisage the idea of a private members club surrounded by whiskey and cigars, you think of an old man's club. That's not the case at all. Not at all.
No, so, I think a great way to really make that point clear is that you are in this environment with some incredible single malts, some incredible vintage single malts as well. You've got the cigar terrace, but then in a jar behind the bar are Palm Bear crisps.
Oh yeah. You gotta love a pot there.
It's really down to earth, and I think what I love about it is, for anyone in the chat that has been to London and has been to Soho, I'm just seeing Shilton's in. Hello, Shilton. How are you, mate?
Hey, mate.
For anyone that has been to Soho, it's a crazy place. It is one of those parts of London that just does not stop. And then you go into Vintage House, and like you say, a store that's been there for a long, long time, and you can tell that just by looking at the selection of bottles. We were talking beforehand about how difficult you find it just to nip down to the shop without hanging about for 20 minutes looking at bottles going back up. But then you go off this door to the side, you go up to these stairs, and it's just this little oasis of whiskey in the middle of London, and it's fantastically peaceful. There's always some good music on, but you can have a good chat and stuff as well. Yeah, just a brilliant, brilliant place. Now, I want to ask you about your Burns night, because the last time we spoke was Burns Week. My tasting had been cancelled, sadly, but I was in the club during the day having a coffee when you were getting ready for your Burns night, and you were cooking a Burns supper. How did that go?
Went very well. Yeah.
Yeah.
The haggis was. I'm not going to lie, Scott. I'm sorry. I know it's probably one of your national dishes. I'm not a fan. Is the idea. And actually, I went to Boisdale's a few months ago and had it as a starter, and it is very nice. It's the idea of it that I can't get along with that.
Right.
But apparently, it was a very, very good haggis.
Okay, good.
And then, of course, came the poem, or the address to the Haggis.
Yeah. Did you nail it? Did you manage to get it?
I did it. I got through it. I'm not going to lie, my Scottish accent isn't the best.
You can pick that up in time. You'll learn that.
I'll learn that. And I think that I always find it very important that the members have something to mock me about, and I try and give them as much ammunition as possible. And that's doing the Burns poem is certainly one of those things.
Yeah. And you mentioned there that it's not what you would maybe think of a private members club in London, and definitely the wide demographic of people that are members of the club is testimony to that. You've got a really wide group of people coming through the doors.
Yeah, massive array. Mainly young and fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, a huge range. I certainly thought when I first went in there that it was going to be a very different atmosphere. I was not sure that I was going to enjoy it. I wasn't sure that it was something I'd want to take over. As soon as I met some of the members and kind of got a feel for the place, there was no doubt in my mind. It's a really, really cool place. It's easy. It removes any I suppose it moves any stigma that there might be to somebody who doesn't know much about whiskey. That scariness that might be involved, because it is a very big subject. And also, I think a lot of people think of whiskey as that kind of first drink that they had when they were a kid and they didn't like it very much. It removes all of that, and it makes it's a very relaxed place. So you can come for sure and know nothing about whiskey, or you can come and know a huge amount about whiskey and fire questions and get them back from me and the guys.
So if someone comes in and it's probably a guest of a member that comes in and has very little or no knowledge of whiskey, maybe isn't even a whiskey drinker, what are you offering them as their sort of introduction to whiskey?
Tomato 15.
Correct. That's the correct answer.
I really enjoy those moments. It's a real challenge. I love them, and there are so many whiskies out there. There's a whiskey for everybody. You know, it's like saying that you don't like Chardonnay. Well, what kind of Chardonnay do you not like? So I find it a real challenge. I think something that I learned in Milroy's during my brief time there was asking people how they take their coffee, something really simple like that. Because if they say they want their coffee black, then you've got a wider range within their palate to work with. You know, they might like a spicy Rioja, for instance, and then you've got a bigger range within whiskies to work with. If they take their coffee with lots of milk and sugar, then you don't want to go too bold with their whiskey. So something nice and light. For me, I've got to say, Glenfarclas 15 is often a real winner, because it's such a wide-ranged dram and excellent. Really easy to drink, but easy on the palate.
Yeah. It's interesting. Over the last couple of weeks, I've had a few people mention to me that the whiskey that first got them hooked was actually heavily smoky, which is kind of counterintuitive, because you would think that's the expert end of the spectrum, you know. But I think when there is an obvious hook, sometimes that works as well. Yeah.
My brother, my oldest brother, used to love smoking whiskies, and now he just can't stand them.
Right.
I'm trying to trick him back into them.
I was kind of the same with when I first started drinking with sherry matured, big sherry bombs. But then I think in time I just started looking for a little bit more subtlety, complexity, and things like that. I'll still take a sherry bomb every now and again, but it's not necessarily what I'm reaching for.
Yeah, Glendronach 18, the Allardyce, that was the one that got me into whiskey.
Yeah.
That was the one that I first tasted at Milroy's, and I was like, this is just outrageously good.
Yeah.
And I think if your palate likes really bold whiskies like that, you're going to be able to explore a wider range far quicker. I quite enjoy knowing what a member likes. There's certain members that will come in and they'll try and get the same thing every time, and I'm trying to ease them off it into different types of whiskey. And obviously you can't jump from something that's lightly sherried up to something that's heavily peated, or like what I'd call a filthy whiskey, like an MRC, Mouton Rothschild cask, Port Charlotte. Like really dirty whiskies, I love them. But you can't expect everybody, especially newcomers into whiskey, to like that straight away.
No, of course. And I think as well, even for myself, maybe you're the same way, those big whiskies that we do like, it's not always what I'm going to sit and enjoy. You know, it's great if I've got a nosing glass and I'm really wanting to pick apart a whiskey, but very often if I'm just sitting with a tumbler having a glass of whiskey at home, it tends to be something much easier drinking than I would normally go and try and buy in a bar.
Mm-hmm.
So like I drink a lot of blends at home myself.
Next dram, what are we having, Scott?
I am going to finish off this bourbon first.
Okay, I will go for a bourbon as well.
And I'm going to, we'll change places. You go for the bourbon, I'll go for the tomatin this time. I'm going to jump into decades.
Nice.
So I think that was the last tasting we did down with you guys at the start of the year.
Brilliant taste.
That was a lot of fun because it's funny, there's not many moments in those tastings when a room falls silent, especially a room like that where everyone kind of knows each other and they'll talk about some of the whiskies. But we did the deconstruction of decades, and actually the first video that we did in this series, myself and my colleague Scott did a deconstruction of decades. Obviously, we were the only two people able to drink it then. Back in January, everyone in the room had it that night. And when we got to the 1980s tomatin, the room fell eerily silent. I thought I'd said something wrong or done something wrong. Now, again, what people might not notice when they're enjoying the whiskey is that during the tastings, you're still busy and about. You've still got to work. You're doing little bits behind the bar, taking photos for social media and stuff. And you must have noticed that the room had gone silent because you reached for your glass then. And this is probably going to be the first and only time that I will swear on these sessions, but I'm standing at the bar having a glass of this incredible 30-plus-year-old whiskey, and I just hear you from the corner of the room shouting, "Fuck me!" And I was like, "Oh, I think George might like this one."
It's good whiskey. That's one of those tastings where I just feel incredibly grateful to be a part of a club like the Soho Whisky Club. You coming along and bringing that, I mean, it was just a super. I mean, first of all, you're great anyway, but to bring along those whiskies that nobody will ever be able to try again, and to break it down in the way that it did, it was incredible. And it's like once in a lifetime things that you get at the club like that really make me very grateful. So I appreciate it.
I guess, you know, there's a lot of reasons to be a member of a whiskey club, and they come in different forms. So you've got incredible clubs like yourself where there is a venue that the club is built around, and it's a private members club, but you pay your subs, and then you've got access to these tastings all around the year. Then you've got more of the sort of like a store might have tastings every couple of months or something, and then you have more like groups of friends who will meet up and swap bottles of whiskey, or it's maybe even in a virtual form that it'll happen. But there's, I think, a range of reasons why they're a good thing to be part of. You mentioned earlier on, whiskey's quite intimidating, and certainly for me, the reason that I fell in love with whiskey was going to tastings and being introduced to the people that made the liquid and having it dumbed down a little bit for me, and then I could build my knowledge up as well. But then the opposite end of the spectrum is where you get incredible evenings with people from the brands coming and showing you things that if this was just a whiskey store tasting or if it was a masterclass at a whiskey festival, you wouldn't get them there. It really is part of, because the club has a knowledge to it.
Yeah. No, there are benefits to them all. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of the Soho Whisky Club. I love my job. I adore it. And it's only £250 a year for membership.
Which, for a private members club in London, is not a lot.
It's fantastic. And I mean, for instance, that Decades 2 tasting that you did, I mean, you can't buy that. And
Well,
if you
well, no, I was going to say you can't buy it, but if you were to pay for the whiskies, that 1977 that we tried in that tasting would be more than £250 for your glass. You know, that bottle will normally cost over £3,000 at retail. So if you were to buy a glass of that in a bar, there's your membership to Soho Whisky Club for the year.
Yeah, and that's it. It's unbelievable. It's such good value. Even if you don't come to the tastings, I mean, as you said, for a private members club in London, it's incredibly cheap, and you get to come in. You said the words oasis earlier. Sometimes I'll be in there kind of 2-3 o'clock, hoping that some people will come through the door to cheer me up. I mean, it's a whiskey club, so it tends to be busier during the evening. Let's face it, people come after work. Although we started doing food during the day, and it's a great place to chill out and come for a meeting. It's rare. But then say I'll go downstairs to go and get something for lunch, and Old Compton Street is just packed. And then you come upstairs into this bliss. It's great.
Yeah.
It's really cool. So just for that, it's worth it.
Yeah, I've seen loads of people just popping up off the street. They've maybe grabbed something from a takeaway shop, and they'll come and have their dinner at the club and then take the rubbish away with them. It's fantastic. It's a cool thing. You don't get that anywhere else. It almost feels like, I guess a lot of people working in London, working in the Soho area, don't live in the Soho area. They live quite a bit out of town. So it is almost like having a living room, a lounge in the heart of town that you can go to. And you don't have to buy a whiskey. You can have a coffee. You don't have to buy anything, really. Obviously, it helps you if people do. But yeah, it's a great place to be.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And it's exactly that. It's their living room.
Yeah.
It's their club.
And that's something that you've said quite a few times in the past, is that you will never shut the club for a private function if people want the club to be open for members. Because we had talked about before the potential of doing a Tomatin evening there, and you said, we can look at it, but I'm not going to shut the club, which is a fantastic position to hold. And I've even heard you saying that you are there from 12 o'clock at lunchtime because maybe a member wants to be in.
Yeah. And also, those whiskies aren't going to check themselves, Scott. I need to go through everyone and just make sure.
Now, I have heard legendary tales about your stock check at Soho Whisky Club. Talk us through that process.
Oh, God. Wow. It's a lengthy one. So, as I said, and we're very proud of it. We like to have stocked shelves. And I don't bring a bottle upstairs without taking the cap off on the way up the stairs. So they're all open. And once a month, we need to check that all is well in the world. So I will open an Excel spreadsheet. I will go to the top left corner of the room. I'll pick up the first bottle and I'll say there's 4 drams in there. I'll put it in the stock sheet and I'll go through for all 700 of them. Fun times. And I always make sure that along the route I pick one that I'm going to have as my treat.
Right. So you treat yourself as a little thank you. How often do you have to do that, did you say?
Once a month.
Once a month. Wow. That is a long day every month.
Yeah. Good 7 hours it takes.
Yeah. You never mentioned there, what bourbon are you drinking tonight?
Sorry. Weller 107 Antique.
Nice.
So, well, I mean, theoretically it's not poor man's Pappy, but they say I think poor man's Pappy is 60% that and 40% Weller 12.
Right. Okay.
Effective mash bill of Pappy Van Winkle.
Right. So you do a little bit of blending of the Wellers to get a Pappy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Just wait till you see the Weller sales spiking now.
Yeah, exactly. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, go for it.
Eddie from Milroy's gave me this.
Legend of a man. Love that guy.
It's a sticker that you put on Weller 12. And it's the Pappy Van Winkle, but it says Poor Man's Pappy at the top. And then it says 40% Weller 12, 60% Weller 107.
Well, there you go. If Eddie says so, then it has to be the truth.
It must. Yeah, absolute legend of a man.
Yeah, great guy. And that actually takes me on to one of the things that I did actually have written down as a question, because there'll be a lot of people that are watching this either live or will watch it afterwards that maybe haven't been to London before and maybe will eventually go. As a whiskey drinker in London, other than the Soho Whisky Club, where do you like to hang out? What's your local haunts?
I'm not going to tell you that.
I promise I won't try and find you.
No, it's not that. There is one that I go to, but it seems like nobody knows about it. And I went in there a couple of months ago, and there was a Daft Mill inaugural release up there, and like there are incredible bottles in there because it's a little bit off. It's Melody in Hammersmith. Take
a note of that, everybody. I'll timestamp this part of the video afterwards.
Is
it a whiskey bar, or is it just a bar that has a great selection?
It's a bar in a hotel, and the owner clearly absolutely loves whiskey, and he's got all the phase oil releases. It's just like you just get unbelievable bottles of whiskey in there at reasonable prices. Why did you ask me this question? No, just go to Milroy's.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was expecting you to say as well. But I'm seeing that Krish is in the chat tonight. So Krish, I hope you've taken a note of that so you can give them a call and get some stock in there so that George can have a tomatin when he's not at the club.
Hey, Krish, you all right, mate?
But Milroy's is another great bar in London. You've worked there, of course, but just around the corner. But a totally different sort of vibe to Soho Whisky Club. That is what you would call the hustling, bustling whiskey bar.
Really is, yeah. I mean, try and get up to the bar on a Friday night in there. It's tricky, and that's for good reason. It's a really, really cool place.
Yeah.
They're Eddie, incredibly knowledgeable. There is no competition because it's a completely different atmosphere. It's a different type of place, and there's no competition, mate. No, I'm joking. I love Milroy's. I'll always go in there. And
yeah.
Now they've got Spitalfields as well. They've got Milroy's Spitalfields.
I was we were there the night before the Whiskey Exchange show last year when they what a great place.
Unbelievable. Like that ground floor whiskey bar is one of the most impressive things in whiskey that I have ever seen.
Yeah,
it's so cool, and I really hope that
it is what a modern take on Milroy should be. I think it's probably the best way of putting it. And the proofing room downstairs is pretty cool as well.
Yeah, it is really cool. And Chris and the guys do an incredible job down there. Like their cocktails are amazing.
Yeah.
And then talking about cocktails, my favourite cocktail, me and my girlfriend, every time she's in London, we go to Swift and have an Irish coffee.
Right.
Swift is also on Old Compton Street, and they've got a really cool bar downstairs stocked with some great whiskies.
Nice.
Then you've got the Salt Room is really good for whiskies. There are a lot. If you want to find good whiskey in London, you will not have to look too far.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting whiskey scene in London. It is booming. I guess in London, all sorts of craft spirits and drinks are doing very, very well. But I was really taken aback by how many just random bars you can go into, and it's not like up in this part of the world where they've got the standard 5 single malts that you would have in every bar. You do get you walk into a random bar and they've got, like you say, a Daft Mill inaugural release or something like that. London's really an interesting place to go as a whiskey drinker.
Yeah, it really is. You can go into the most random place and find incredible bottles of whiskey, and often, those bottles of whiskey, occasionally they might have been there for a long time. The price would just be, because as you know, the London boom has kind of coincided with a global demand for whiskey, and with that, obviously, the prices go up.
Yep.
For instance, that Glendronach 18 is a lot more expensive now, as are every other bottle of whiskey, than it was when I first drank it.
I had a great experience with Glendronach 18 in Paris last year. I was staying in a hotel, and I went to the bar in the hotel, and they had a couple of whiskies, and then they had the bottle of Glendronach 18 on the bar. And that was by far and away the most interesting whiskey on that bar. So I asked the barmaid, I was like, it hadn't been opened yet. I was like, can you tell me how much a dram of that's going to set me back? And she's like, I'll have a look on the system. And she couldn't find anything. And she said, sorry, I can't find anything. I was like, oh, no problem. And just I was about to say, I'll have a beer. She said, I can offer you it at another whiskey's price point. I can find the closest thing and offer you it for that. I was like, okay, what would that be? And she said, Glenlivet Founders Reserve.
Yeah. Me and my mate Victor were in Madrid. We were out visiting a vineyard with Martin from Gonzalez Bias. You know Martin?
I don't think I do. No.
He's a real character. You'd remember if you'd met him. Proper
right.
Man. Legend again. So he took us out, and Victor was out as well. And Victor had gone out the night before, and he came to me when we got to the vineyard, and he was like, George, we're going to this bar straight after dinner. And I was like, right, okay. And there was Talisker 25, and they had absolutely no idea what it was. And we decided that it would be unfair of us not to finish that bottle. And I think we did it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Another one for whiskey clubs. Victor Porter runs something called the Southport Whisky Club.
Yeah.
I've been up there and done a couple of tastings. What he's doing.
I've done one myself.
Oh yeah, of course you have. Of course you have. What he's doing up there, Scott, is just incredible.
It's just brilliant.
People who love whiskey, bringing them together and giving them a great night. It's basically not for profit. It's because he loves people and he loves whiskey. And I'm sure that you can find, maybe not quite to that degree, but you'll be able to find pockets of that around the country. Just because you're not in London doesn't mean that you can't become part of a club.
Absolutely. They're maybe not to the same level as Soho Whisky Club, where you can go every time. There may be a club that will have one night a week or one night a month. I guess in Scotland, probably the most famous whisky club would be the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. And that's kind of like a similar take, really, to Soho Whisky Club. It's not necessarily private members, but there's membership and there's a place to go, and you can go anytime you want. But every town across Scotland, across Britain, seems to have a pocket of people that will go and have whiskey. And that was really good for me, because the majority of my drinking buddies that I grew up with, they're not big whiskey fans. After watching these videos, they've asked me to do a tasting when things go back to normal. So I think I might have them on the precipice of being fans, but I've had to go and look for other people to share whiskey experiences with, because I've not been able to do it with them. I think with things like Facebook and Instagram, they're actually a lot easier to find than you might think.
Yep. On the contrary, I'm very pleased that my mates don't like whiskey, Scott.
Yeah. Now it's quite interesting, because with the whole lockdown at the moment, I don't necessarily think that I've been drinking more, but what I have been doing is drinking more of my own stuff, because I'm not able to go out to bars and things. So a lot of these bottles that I had bought with the intention of tucking away and holding for a special day, that special day has come in the last 7 weeks. So no, you're right. I think if they
36-year-old.
Yeah. I actually don't have a bottle in the house, so it just goes to show how much I've enjoyed that.
I mean, my whiskey stock is getting less and less, and I'm now tucking into those bottles that you probably shouldn't. And so I've got lots and lots of bottles with about that much in, maybe 2 or 3 drams in, because I just don't want to miss the bottle.
Have you ever made, and maybe does the club have an infinity bottle?
Yeah, I have to say it never gets that full.
Right.
But we do, yeah. We use it for birthdays or if a member's been especially well behaved.
Okay.
Or if me and the team just want a little drink. So yeah, it doesn't get too built up. Have you seen the one in Milroy's? They've got, I think it's like a 5-litre Nika from the barrel bottle.
Now that you mentioned that, I wasn't sure if that was with you guys or if that was there, but yeah, I have seen that bottle.
And that's because Eddie is very strict on who drinks out of that.
Right, okay. Yeah.
There's never more than half a bottle of it.
Yeah, it's funny because I guess what that is like when what's left in the bottle is less than a dram that you can serve, they'll just put it into there. The whiskey bar local to me, the Malt Room, I was in there before Christmas and I was wondering if they had something similar. It turns out no. If they've got anything less than a dram in the bottle, it goes into the glass of the person that ordered the last full dram. So I think it was a Delphi Tanninic bottling, like black as cola. It was a big sherry bomb, and it was pretty much 2 drams that they had in it, but it was just below the rim. So John goes, yeah, go for it. So these little places do exist and they're brilliant.
Nice. Yeah, you won't get out of the club.
No. Yeah, you get a lot in your membership, but a free dram is not one. So I mean, obviously at the moment you're on furlough, your mind will be racing about things to do. Maybe you've heard from other clubs about what they're doing. How are clubs kind of reacting to what's going on right now? What's the kind of scope for things going back to normal, if they will? How's that all playing about?
Well, I can't speak for anybody else, apart from obviously, and I'm sure you've seen them as well, a couple of posts going up on social media saying we're still paying the rent, we can't afford this, we need help.
Yep.
Which is awful to see. And I urge people to please help those places, because it would be terrible that having just created such an incredible boom, places like that close down.
Yeah.
And you know, you can often look at places like that and look at a huge membership fee and think they must be doing all right for themselves. But a lot of the time, I think that these places are going month by month, and the rent will be far higher than people anticipate.
Yeah.
But I can't really talk for anybody else in terms of what's going to happen and getting back to a new norm. But for ourselves, obviously, you're right, my mind has been racing. We're going to have to do certain things. We're going to have to change things, and we were talking about this before we came live on air, how it's their club. The idea of telling people that they can't sit next to each other is awful for me. But we're going to have to be sensible about it. We're going to have to follow the guidelines. And there is going to be the scenario, I believe, where we're going to have to cut down the amount of people that are allowed in Soho Whisky Club. Now, currently, legally, we're allowed 40. So that's not many anyway.
No.
You've been in the club when it's pretty full.
Yeah, 40 people fills that room. That is like standing room only near enough.
Exactly. And you get an incredible atmosphere when there are 40 people in there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are going to have to cut that down, I think. The figure, I'm not sure yet. We'll have to really look at it closely. And then social distancing, and people are going to be asked to obviously hand sanitize. We're going to have litres of the stuff. And then on top of that, unfortunately, I think for the first time ever, we are going to have to do bookings on Thursdays and Friday nights. Now, that's not set in stone, but I think that probably is the way that we're going to have to do it, because we're reducing that number to 15. It's the only fair way.
Yeah. And so that will naturally have an impact in terms of being able to offer the tastings that you normally do, because getting an ambassador to come in to speak to 10 people, it doesn't have the same sort of sell as it does to speak to 40 people. And because I think something for me as an ambassador going into the Soho Whisky Club, it's one of those special tastings. They are definitely among the top tastings that I look forward to going and doing, because it's not just me standing and presenting the brand. There is a conversation going on back and forth. Everyone's really in a good mood. They're really up for it. I remember the first tasting that we did. I mentioned that we had released whiskey the year prior that wasn't going to be in the tasting lineup, that had been matured in rum casks, and there was 2 bottles downstairs. And one guy runs downstairs to grab a bottle. I've never had anyone run out of a tasting before, but that happened. Wow. And then, yeah, maybe I've had more than I am aware of. But then a second guy ran out to grab the other bottle, but that second guy was you, and you took that bottle back up and you popped it and poured everyone a dram of it. You know, really a great atmosphere, a great tasting to be part of. That's not going to be possible with 10, 15 people in the room. So are you thinking of ways to do more like sampling packs and virtual tastings with the club?
Sure. Yeah, we're going to have to, as much as the club of yesteryear it's going to be horrendous that things are going to change, but the whole world is changing.
Yeah.
And if we need to innovate to go forward, then that's something that we will do without a shadow of a doubt. We're committed to keeping things going. Hopefully, I mean, we can all hope, hopefully in a year's time, it will be like none of this ever happened. I think that's unlikely, but we can always hope. In the meantime, we will be doing things to innovate, and that will probably include online tastings for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe we can set one up where you guys, when this is over, send samples out to members. We can do like a virtual tasting like that.
We'd love to. We'd love to. We've been. It's one of those things that, I mean, my job title is global brand ambassador, but I don't feel very global right now. You know, I've been very lucky to be able to host tastings for other markets and things like that. But we still want to reach out to people and get people trying the whiskey. That's what, I mean, ultimately for us, we've always said the #1 marketing tool that we've got at Tomatin is the liquid. It's an incredible whiskey, so get it to lips, and it does well. But will we have another whiskey?
Yeah. What are you going?
Well, I'm in my living room right now, and this is actually a bookcase behind me. This is full of books that I've tarted up with Tomatin bottles. So all of my other whiskies through the house. So I'm going to have another Tomatin.
Okay.
Well aware that sounds like a weekly advert, so I'll do something pretty unique.
Nice.
Old bottle from the 1990s there. Of a
Nice. I love when you find an old bottle like that. Right, well, I will go for. Oh, I might go peated actually.
Good move.
I might go for. I'm going to go for a long row red.
Good shout. Now, I've just seen
whiskey.
I've seen something that has absolutely taken me by surprise in the chat, and that's Lance Coors. So Lance is he works for our importer in America, and he's based in. And Lance is well known for his love of the Tomatin 14-year-old. If you tell him about a whiskey, he'll tell you about the Tomatin 14-year-old. But he's just told me that he is moving on to the Tomatin 18-year-old tonight. That is one small step for man, one giant leap for Lance Coors whiskey glass. It will not know what has hit it. Oh, he's ran out of the 14-year-old. That'll be why. Fantastic. Lance Slanger, great to have you in. Oh, Mark Watson tonight. Has Mark ever done a tasting at the Soho Whisky Club?
Has Mark done a tasting at the Soho Whisky Club? I don't think so.
No, okay. I was just wondering if you've maybe come across him. He's on the red wine tonight. Um, that's a good point. You know, I've been very lucky to be able to taste some great drams as part of the tastings that we've done in the club. But out with the tomato tastings, what have been your favourite tastings in your time at Soho Whisky Club?
Oh,
There'll be a lot, sure.
yeah, there's so many. I mean, we are absolutely blessed. Colin Dunn's always a great one. He is a unique character.
Yeah.
And obviously they're always very sought after seats because of that, and he never disappoints, and he always wants to do something strange and different. So the last tasting that Colin did with us, he did a night called Whiskey with Words. So he'd be like reading out passages from a book. So he started with Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and he matched that with a whiskey.
Oh, wow.
I did a speech, actually, a Harold Pinter speech for the members. I'd like to give them ammo.
You did?
I did a speech, yeah.
Fantastic.
Nicholas, one for the road. Yeah, that was interesting. So Colin was always a really good one. A good friend of mine, Jill Boyd. She's always fantastic.
Yeah.
She's a genius blender. Blender of the year. And
that's an interesting one because I've met Jill a couple of times. Once actually at Soho Whisky Club, but most of the times I've met her are on the Cinderella whiskey cruise over in Sweden, which is this. Have you heard much about this festival?
She has told me about it, yeah, and she's told me. I think the words were "never again, George." Yeah,
she was there this year, so. It's insane. So basically, you know, most festivals you go to, you work your 8-hour day, and then they finish, and you go to a bar, and then you go home or something like that. At this thing, from Thursday until Sunday, you're on a cruise on the from Stockholm that goes out and back and out and back, and the festival's on the car deck. So it feels a little bit like that casino feeling because there's no windows or anything. I personally love it because of how mental it is. But I don't think it was this year, but a previous year, I went to one of Jill's tastings on the sailing, and incredible insight into whiskey.
Yeah, the woman is unbelievable. Yeah. Going back onto the cruise, one of the reasons she said she hated it so much is one year somebody saw her going into her room, so they knew what room she was in, and they were knocking on the door going, "Give us some more whiskey," like 3 a.m.
Yeah, well, it's a funny one because the way the boats work, because the cabins, this festival sells out months in advance, so the cabins where you stay are they're quite hard to come by, you know. So as a exhibitor, you don't pay for your cabin. So unless you're doing something really interesting during the show, they put you right down on the deck where in Titanic the Irish folk are dancing. You know, it's right down at that level. But if you do a couple of tastings throughout the weekend, you'll get a double bed. And if you throw a 30-year-old whiskey in, you might get a window. So Jill that year, she was right down on those lower decks, and she was telling me that this is the rooms where your bed folds into the wall and back out, you know. And she was saying that the guys in the room next door were having a party, and they're like, "Hey, whiskey girl, come over, come over." Insane. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, she is a shining light in the whiskey world. She's absolutely incredible. So yeah, Colin Dunn. I mean, there are so many, Scott. We had Davil Gandhi recently. I wanted to set up a series of what we call masterclasses. I mean, really, every tasting is a masterclass, but now we're going to call tastings, and then we'll have masterclasses, which are far more in depth into a particular subject. So Davil focused very much on blending.
Right.
I would love, for instance, to have a maltster come in, or a farmer, or a cooper. And I mean, my dream would be to have a barrel built in front of the members at the Soho Whisky Club. And they're a series of more in-depth, almost lecture tastings where people are focusing on something very particular, and it's really for members who are a bit more geeky and nerdy, and it's not for everybody to come along and have a great time. It's more studious than that.
Yeah. On that note, I'm going to give. Well, this is weird. I'm going to give myself a little plug. So next week we will not be doing one of these softer side sessions because on Saturday next week, Saturday the 9th, we have our second lockdown whiskey festival. But the following week, my Friday night session, I'm going to have Andrew Russell, who is the general manager at the Speyside Cooperage. He's going to be on with me and having a chat about all things cask. So you just reminded me there to mention that. But yeah, that level of thing's really cool as well.
Yeah, that would be absolutely amazing. I think probably it would take the building down if we tried to build a cask in that. So maybe innovation, and we can get a cooper to come in and talk us through whilst another cooper is building live. Might be an idea. Talking about plugs, am I allowed to plug?
Yeah, absolutely.
Whilst the club is closed, I'm gonna, just for fun really, set up a series of very informal tastings with my company Without an E. So whiskey without an E, withoutane.co.uk. And if you look out on Facebook and Instagram, you can find out the details of that. That'll be coming up in the next week or so. So that'll be good fun. I just need to keep busy.
Yeah.
It's the first couple of weeks were actually a bit of a holiday, but after that, I cannot wait to get back and open that place.
Yeah. Get back and speak to your friends again and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So one last question I wanted to ask before going on was just really about London, about the members at the club. Are you noticing any trends, any new things popping up? One thing that I've noticed a lot recently when I've been down in England is there seems to be much more of a acceptance of English distilleries than there maybe was even a year or two ago. Things like Bimber are really resonating well with fans.
Yeah, I mean, Davil Gandhi from the Lakes Distillery was incredible. Bimber did a tasting for me before the original Bimber came out. Before that went live, they came and did a blind tasting. So I ran it, and we did 3 whiskies. I can't remember what they were, but one of them was a bourbon. It was Uncle Nearest bourbon. One of them, I think maybe there was even a Glendalough Irish whiskey, and we matched them with 3 Bimber pre-releases. So they weren't even whiskey yet; they hadn't been in cask for 3 years.
Yeah.
And people just were so surprised by those whiskies, the things that they're doing there, the way that liquid is maturing. In that, have you been to Bimber?
I've not had the chance to yet.
Oh, you should go. The next time you're in London, it's out in West London, and it's almost like I thought it was going to be an MOT garage. It's kind of down a back lane in a garage, and you go in there, and Darius is there on these incredibly beautiful but quite small stills with the barrels aging behind them. It was unbelievable, and the whiskey's really good. So that's quite cool. In terms of trends. Yeah, I think people are playing around more and more with out there whiskies, wanting to try things with slightly different finishes. Definitely going for happier to go for younger whiskies. This is members of the club. I can't speak for everybody, but that's what independent bottlings are just huge. Can't get enough of them. And if it's a single cask independent bottling and the members like it, those couple of cases that the guys in the vintage house got in last week are gone. They go so quickly.
Wow.
I think the trend is at the moment, try everything.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, almost more the better for it, because you can discuss it. And I've seen a lot of people at the club more recently. They'll be in a group of people, and one will go to the bar and come back with 4 or 5 drams. And they're not trying to trick each other out. It's out of interest. And they'll sit down and they won't tell them what the dram is, and they'll just discuss it. So they'll break down the component tasting notes and try and work out what it is. And it's just a good fun game. It's good to play out as well.
Good. Just to interrupt there a minute, I've seen a message in the chat from Doc McAllen and Rare saying, please check out the chat, there are questions. I think we're actually having some difficulty with the live chat coming in tonight. Normally it comes through quite gradually and you can see the questions coming in as they come in. But what I've been noticing tonight is that it stalls for a long, long time. And then I've been getting a burst of messages through at once. So I've not been able to address any of the questions that have been coming in as they've been coming in. I'm seeing going back and forth that there are all these things, but I think tonight we have been having a couple of issues with this hosting platform, StreamYard. So for those of you that have asked questions, apologies that we've not been able to jump into them. I will get a bit of time after this to go back through and answer those as much as I can, but they have not been coming through in the way that they have in previous weeks. So apologies for that, and apologies if we've not been able to answer what you've been asking. But yeah, George, we have spoken for over an hour now.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I mean, I can't wait to get back down to London, to get back into the club and spend a bit of time with you guys and with your members, and hopefully get you guys up to the distillery at some point. So yeah, here's to things going back to normal and whiskey clubs taking full control again. So,
fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Scott. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, George. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Cheers.
Cheers.